All right. Are we live? Are we
I think
official?
we're live, and I'm going to get on and kind of share us before we get
All right.
started. There we are.
Our little blurb pop up. Everybody a second to file in the door here.
Okay. Here we are. I hear you too. Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Go ahead and comment. Say hello. You know, we love to hear from you guys. So, and I'm going to, hey, Bart. Bart says we're live.
Awesome.
Michelle says hello.
Ask
So
them how the sound is.
Do we sound good? Do we sound amazing?
I guess I can hear me too.
It's true. We're not always used to that.
That's true.
I went for it. I was with you. Well, we'll see if they comment. Hopefully we sound okay. We are excited to talk about self-care tonight. Molly brought this suggestion to me weeks ago, and it was interesting. Bart says we sound amazing. It's perfect. Yay! Thank you, Bart. Thank you.
Thanks, Bart.
So Molly brought this to me. It's been quite a few weeks now. And then we had the topic of psychic kids. And it was interesting to see how this topic, I was like, maybe we need this before psychic kids. And then coming into this week again, it feels like the perfect time for us to talk about self-care, especially with so much going on in the world and energy being wound up and really needing to learn how to take care of ourselves, because we are trying to take care of each other, which is powerful in this time. And I encourage that, but also making sure that you're taken care of, you know?
Absolutely. It's really funny. You know, we were kind of talking about this today when I brought this subject up a couple of weeks ago. I was kind of feeling like I wasn't super excited. I'm like, well, you know, we've kind of talked about, you know, some of the bigger, juicier stuff. So, you know, and we need to talk about self-care at some point. I guess we can talk about it now. And so we put it on the calendar, and I was just kind of like, you know, wasn't super excited about it. Again, it just is not one of those juicy topics. And I think somehow Spirit knows that, you know, it couldn't be more timely. We so need this right now with everything that's been going on. Especially, I mean, I think, you know, for everybody, it's been super stressful and super intense, dealing with all the emotions of, you know, everything that's been happening around the world with the demonstrations, the anti-racism demonstrations. But also, don't forget, we just came out of a lunar eclipse, a full moon, a lunar eclipse. And do we have 5 planets in retrograde right now?
6, 7, somewhere in that range. Legit.
And I mean, they're kicking up some really serious energy. I know Christopher brought this up in his Astro Lab series either last week or week before, talking about, you know, the last time that some of these planets were aligned the way that they are now was, you know, one was, you know, the fall of Rome, the Rodney King riots, the fall of Rome, and I think the assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, I saw that.
Super intense stuff that we're dealing with here. So if you feel a little fried, a little frizzled around the edges, you know, you are not alone, and it is for good reason. So definitely a good time to talk about some self-care.
And in so many different ways, we need self-care. You know, we're going to talk about it in general, but as energy workers, there's a side piece to that. You know, I mean, really is. And I will say, I read that post and heard that from Christopher as well. And the thing about it was like, these planets were in retrograde and it caused this, and we got all of them in retrograde together.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, it's intense. It's like, it's intense times 3 or 5 or
3 or 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow.
And I've been feeling it. And I will say, like, those things bring to the surface for those of you, and I'm sure Christopher touched on this, but this kind of energy brings things out.
Yes.
So where you may feel intense or crazy, I was just telling Molly, I feel like I'm a little off. Like this week is weird and I feel off, and we're going to speak to, you know, different aspects of that and what I'm doing for self-care. And Molly's going to talk about self-care. Just flew out. Words just fly out today.
I knew you meant.
But you know, it's just the intensity of the energy that those things bring to light. It's bringing things to the surface that you need to spend time on. It's bringing things to the surface that we want to like tuck away.
Absolutely, very much so. And it's funny, you know, I was talking with a dear friend of mine last week who was experiencing out of nowhere some really intense feelings of rage and resentment and sadness. Like it came out of nowhere, and I was noticing a little bit of it myself. But you know, I always, you know, I didn't really pay much mind to it. And then he said he was experiencing that. And then almost, I mean, within an hour of us having that conversation, Christopher online posted something about him having the exact same experience. So, you know, this is all bringing up some really uncomfortable stuff. And it is, you know, I think you made a really good point that regardless of how we are experiencing it, what it is doing is bringing to the surface those things that, you know, are rising up, you know, the things that we have tucked down and stuffed down, but really need to come to the surface and be acknowledged and recognized and healed and loved.
Yeah. And I think I want to talk about, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right into how we kind of handle that piece with self-care. Because there is a piece of self-care to that in the sense of feeling it, journaling it, discovering it, and not just shoving it down.
You gotta feel it to heal it.
Yes. And I'm really, really good at distracting myself. I've learned this over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Where's my phone? Where's my TV? What can I do other than sleep and think about what I need to sit with?
Well, I was going to say too, you know, before you put so much blame on yourself, we also have to recognize that, you know, we as a culture, you know, have been, this is something that we as a culture carry. And, you know, it's been handed to us as a coping mechanism when things get tough. You know, we've been, you know, handing it off to each other as coping mechanisms. We want to bypass it. You know, spiritual bypassing is a thing, y'all. You know, that good vibes only mentality. Well, you know, like we were just saying, you got to feel it to heal it. And that really sucks sometimes. But unfortunately, that really tends to be the only way to really to get through and get done with it, you know?
Yeah.
Or at least a piece of it.
Are you talking about spiritual bypassing Friday in your shadow work?
You know, it is something, yes. I mean, I don't think you can talk about shadow work without talking about spiritual bypassing. It's not going to be a major focus, but it is, it's like you can't talk about shadow work without talking about, you know, the tendency. There's been I think people are becoming much more aware of it, but there's been such a massive drive within the spiritual community over the last decade to a couple of decades where, you know, this high vibes only, we don't want to deal with anything that's low vibration. And, you know, but you in order to do social work, in order to do shadow work, you have to be able to get into those darker, you know, more uncomfortable places.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're going to touch base on that. That's going to be so amazing on Friday. And people are looking forward to it because shadow work is kind of where these things are coming to the surface and you're like, holy shit, what is this? Why am I feeling this? And even this week, like, and you all know I'm an open book. So for me, you know, I'm going into a healing journey this weekend and all of my body stuff came up this week. And I was like, haven't I dealt with this already? Right. So I've had to have some self-care and, you know, one, sit with it and why am I feeling it? And where is it coming from? Like, and really sitting and allow yourself to feel it. So I have to do that. Am I perfect at that? No, I'm so good at distracting. But at some point I have to, like, when I turn off things to go to bed, things just start dropping in.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know. I hear you saying I need time to like reflect. And I will say, like, it will happen in timing. It's gonna happen. You know, you will do that. It's whether you're forced into it or you gently choose to do that. You know, so for me, that's a piece of self-care for myself is feeling it, crying. I just cried. I don't know all of why I was crying, but I was like, I'm gonna cry because I feel this right now.
Absolutely. I think that's a massive, massive thing that doesn't get talked about enough is that, I mean, and you touch on two different points. One of which is that, you have carved out time to do journey work this weekend. And often what journey work is a process of, going in and excavating and examining and sitting with and being with those pieces of yourself that you don't often, and either don't often take time to look at or you're actively avoiding. So, and not you personally in those active avoidance,
Sure.
but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, so doing that journey work, I think, is a massive piece of self-care, even though, any type of, I've also done quite a bit of journey work myself. And, anytime you engage in that, there's always, I don't think I've walked into journey space within the last several years without understanding, there may be some rocky terrain ahead. You're heading into some, the possibility is really there that you could be heading into some rough ground. But, taking that time for ourselves to get into those spaces in the form of journey work is really important. But even if you're not doing a formalized journey, having enough grace with yourself and, allowing yourself to, pardon my French, but fall the fuck apart if you need to do that.
Right.
Crying moves energy. Allowing yourself to feel those feelings and giving yourself permission, not beating ourselves up for being sad, for grieving, for feeling sorry for ourselves, for being pitiful, whatever the words that all kind of come up and swim in our minds. But, giving ourselves permission to be with those emotions, because again, I mean, it sounds super cute and super catchy, but you have to feel it to heal it. You have to be, allow yourself to be able to sit with those things. So, I mean, that's massive.
Absolutely.
Self-care.
And that goes the same with whether it's journey work or whether you're going through something, or like for me on my full moon ceremonies or new moon ceremonies, like a piece of my self-care, yes, to feel it, but also to help release it in, like, I might take an Epsom salt bath to help release toxins and energy.
Yeah.
I will also journal what I'm feeling because I can sit and feel it. But if I really tap into writing it, like, okay, I'm feeling this. This is the memory that's coming up. This is the way this makes me feel. And then I change it and I'm like, I'm releasing that feeling and I'm bringing about feelings of love. Like, so I find a way to work through it, whether it be a visualization or whether I'm journaling it. Like, that's why I recommend people journey is go ahead and work through it in words, because as you're writing, more is coming to you and it's releasing in a different way. So finding what works too.
Absolutely. I think, that verbalizing of the emotions that you are experiencing is I think it's a powerful part of transmuting and processing that energy. It's, it's funny, whether it's in mediumship or it is in journey space, and journaling, that there's something that happens. There is, I'm trying to even find the right word. But there's a transformation that occurs when you are able to really get in and verbalize what you are feeling. And I find, when I'm doing mediumship work, especially if it's coming through with a lot of emotion and I'm trying to translate that putting words to it, it's almost like, starting to put words to it is, finding the end of the thread, and it helps that energy come through and process.
Absolutely. And putting words to that is a challenging thing sometimes,
It really can be. Yep. It really can be.
And
I don't know what the hell this is.
Right.
And then, they never come, we've talked about this before. It's rare that when you're dealing with heavy emotions, it never comes through as just anger or just frustration or just grief or just, it's always a cocktail. So, you're kind of dealing with a little bit of mud often in there. And so tweezing that apart and finding out what it is and naming all the things can be a process.
Yeah, and it could be something that's triggered right now, but it's something from your childhood.
Oh, yeah.
So tapping into, why was I triggered by that?
Yep.
Asking those questions to your soul, to your higher self, like, well, why did her saying no just trigger me to be like, throw a massive fit, or whatever it may be. But also, like, we're taught to suppress. I heard often growing up, like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. And it wasn't a malicious thing. It was a safety thing for the other person. Like, don't cry. Well, and because it affects their emotions. So often we're taught, don't do that. Don't cry. That's not the truth. And really it's discovering now that it's very true. Your emotions are very real and they're very important. And it is so important for you to get it up and out is what I like to say. Get that up and out rather than tucking it in, because you tuck it in, it's going to be like quadruple coming back. Like, oh, here it comes again on top of childhood. And
yeah. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that even when you deal with it now, I mean, I'm sure you're finding this out for yourself. I know for myself, even when you process things, whether it's in journey space or, you're doing it, just in your own personal work, it's a layer. You're processing a layer, and it's going to, those things will come back up. But if you're not dealing with that at all, you continue to stamp it down. And that's, again, back to the culture that we live in, this Western culture, specifically in the United States. We are not given a vocabulary for emotional healing and emotional work, and there is, I'm sure you've heard this in some circles. It's almost like a mantra, this whole fuck your feelings. Again, pardon my French, y'all, but, that's, that, again, your feelings don't matter and your feelings have no place. And especially, in professional environments and, work life and stuff like this, that, there is this, or has been, I feel it significantly starting to shift, but there has been for a long time, this idea that, the emotional pieces of ourselves have not been welcome in those environments. And so, we've grown up again in a culture that hasn't given us a vocabulary, a language, or tools to be able to process these things. So we're learning to do this now, and it is a learning process for many of us.
Absolutely, it's incredible, to get to touch base on that. But you're right about, like, professional, not professional. Like, I'm very much a person whose emotions are coming through and I need to express them.
Yeah.
And interesting, like, when sometimes I feel like it's too much to share and I'll hold tight, and then it's like a bomb later. So, that's such an important piece, I feel like. And especially with energy workers right now. And when I say energy workers, I mean any of you all that work with energy, that do light work, that call yourselves an empath or an intuitive, like, especially right now with so much change in our world, we pick up on that easily, whether we recognize it as a world thing or it feels like a personal thing, because it can feel very personal with everything going on, and then feeling anger and frustration because our world feels that.
Yes. Yeah. Especially, I will say, we are all very susceptible as energy workers, but specifically those that identify as empaths. This is a really, really overwhelming time. And it's, it's interesting. I think, this has been one of those points, I think, in my entire life. This may be the biggest point where I felt like self-care is so paramount. We have to be so good about taking care of ourselves for the fact that we are also so needed. the work that we do, especially as empaths, that transmutation of energy is so necessary right now. And it's about finding that fine line where we are able to, I for myself, I feel the need to be engaged somehow. I think that's just kind of how I operate as an empath. I want to be part of a healing process in the midst of all of this and stand for healing, and it's innate and in my wiring. But like we experienced last week, we both wound up with massive migraines on the same day.
I was going to mention that too.
Yeah, and had to take a minute. So it's it's about finding that balance where we are able to do the work that we feel called to do and be present in the ways that we feel really called to be present, but also giving ourselves permission to say, you know what, I can't be present the way that I want to. And I feel like last week being a perfect example, neither one of us, I think, really felt like we could be present the way that we wanted to. We could deliver the things that we wanted to deliver for the people that were going to show up for us. And so,
right.
We knew it was time to engage in some self-care for the good of everybody involved, really.
And that's something that happens to me. I have to listen to my migraines. And I want to speak to that as far as self-care goes on the body in general. Like, one, I want to say, Molly and I can't tell you what self-care is for you, but we can tell you our experience, because my self-care might not work for you. It might be that you need something totally different, but it's recognizing what you need, which has been something that I've developed over this past year. Like, what do I need to be healthy? Like, I know that I need time in the morning to myself, to read, to journal, to meditate. I need free flow in the morning for my day to go really well. And I'm lucky that I can have that, and also, like, let me speak to the body, because my body has been speaking so loudly. I actually have talked to Dana Skrodsky. She does great readings, and does, different health coaching and intuitive work. And she is the one person I contacted and was like, help me, because my body speaks so loudly. And it's not just now food. It is very particular on food, because, well, almost like my body is like, okay, if you're not going to make that shift, we'll make it for you. Like, damn it. And on the other side of that, I was not listening to where I needed to be, and my stomach was bloating. So on a self-care thing, it's listening to your body when it's talking to you. So the headaches, the stomach aches, like, kind of like tune into that. And when I say tune in, like, for me, I close my eyes, I take a deep breath in and allow that breath to travel into my stomach. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, allow your body to answer back. You tune into it, use your feeling, your seeing, your hearing, or contact somebody, an intuitive, that can help you with that. But discovering what you need as far as eating, like, high vibe foods, are real important.
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, we all love, like, for me, I love things to be easy. So if I could just get really cool high vibe food and pick it up, I would love that. But I have to cook it to get the really good stuff, So part of that is making sure that I have what I need, and that I take the time to take care of myself as far as food goes, and water. And I'm not a nutritionist, but I know a lot, because I've struggled with my weight my entire life. I know a lot about listening to my body, and I know a lot about, it telling me, here's like last Monday, the Sunday before, I'd had a lot of sugar, and they were like, you're going to feel like hell tomorrow. The next day I had a migraine. They were like, we told you. I was like, damn it. I know. I know. And it's like more and more, and that's for me. And that may not be the case with everybody, but high vibe foods, getting enough water, watching what sugar you're putting in, and other things. But those are big, big deals.
Absolutely. And I think too, and one of the things that I've learned for myself is that it's not about, for me, when it comes to self-care, because I struggle with my weight too, is I have to approach it not from a place of restriction, but from a place of nurturing and, and really wanting to, pamper my body, take care of my body. And there are times, when that resistance builds and I'm like, damn it, I really want a Kit Kat. I need the candy. I need just a little bit of, and this is both literal and metaphorical. If I'm feeling that resistance building, I know if I can, if I get to have just a little bit of the candy, it'll help me move through to the rest of the important stuff. So it's it's not about active denial. I think that's one thing that shifted for me in my approach to self-care, because I had this idea that, it had to look and feel a certain way based on an aesthetic that I was seeing being reflected back to me, like, in Instagram and Facebook, and, that, it had to look and be this certain way. And I realized that, no, it really is about what speaks to us on a really individualized level. It's great reference points to look to others, but ultimately we have to listen to that internal voice, because, our self-care routines could be entirely different. What we need as individuals, not only physically, but, spiritually and emotionally, could look entirely different. We just have to listen with our own ears to our own needs to find the way, and be very gentle with ourselves, and, forgiving, maybe on those days where I, have a little too much candy.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, anymore, I leave guilt out. And that's new. That's way new for me.
Yeah.
But over the past 6 months, like, I don't guilt myself. If that's something I'm going to eat, I made that choice.
Yeah.
Can't change it. Why sit with it?
Absolutely.
And also, like, yes, I want to lose weight. Let's say that, like, yes. Mm-hmm. And I can't focus on restriction or what I can't have. Like, if we think about that, you all know I talk about manifesting stuff. If you think about all of the things you're taking out, or all of the things you don't want, like, that's what you attract. So you're going to crave it more. So if you allow yourself to just eat mindfully, eat healthy, and treat yourself without guilting yourself, that is a piece of self-care in its own. Like, you deserve to have what you need. And when you were talking, the other thing that came up, and I thought, and I was like, oh, that is self-care right there. Stop comparing yourself. Just quit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was there too, like, getting rid of the shoulds. Don't should all over yourself. Getting rid of the shoulds and the shame. I mean, those are massive pieces of self-care, all three of those.
And, this being new for me, as far as not guilting myself, I will even acknowledge it. And I'll be like, you're going to eat that cake. Are you doing it because you want it? Are you doing it because you're emotional? And I acknowledge whatever it is. And I'm like, and I'm still going to eat it. Gonna eat it.
Yep.
Okay. So, so, but different care, kind of self-care is, I have to stop myself from comparing, because trust me, I'm not the same as a lot of different mediums. Yeah. I'm not the same as, even when I was health coaching, I'm not the same size as a lot of those health coaches, but it's not about size. It's not about size. Right. It's not about shape. Like, Molly and I are speaking to your soul. Like, that's what we're trying to get down to, is speak to the soul level. And of all people, like, she and I know how important that is, And I do want to say, you all that have joined us, we have a couple more hellos. I want to say hello to Jill and say hello to Kelly. And we do have a comment on here, and I want to let you all know we love, love, love your questions and comments. So please, comment away. Bart said, self-care for me is tied to how I feel about myself. If I'm hating myself, the way I look, etc., then I'm not practicing a loving self-care. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, because you're absolutely right. And that's a big piece for me, and a big piece that comes up for me often. And I don't hate myself, but sometimes it weighs on me, the frustrations of certain things, you know.
Yeah.
So that's so important.
Well, and one of the things that, you know, that popped in when you were reading his comment is that, especially right now and with everything that's going on, we are probably in a lot of ways feeling pulled to, you know, like we were talking about earlier, be more present and be more active. And, you know, I think that's important. But, you know, in those moments where you're like, oh my God, I need to shut it off. I need my alone time. I need my stillness. I need my whatever it is. Not to compare, to shame, but to love ourselves in those moments too. Because I think that can be really, really hard when we find it. Like last week with the migraines, you know, I don't know about you, but I know for me, you know, in those moments, I'm like, God, I really should push myself and be there, because, you know, they're going to be there. And, you know, there's, when other people are involved, I know for me, it's much harder for me to listen to my own needs than it is to feel like I really should do the thing, be the thing, show up to the thing. And there's times when we really need to exercise self-care, and really need to give ourselves permission to exercise that self-care with love.
Yes.
You know, we're guilting ourselves, shaming ourselves. We're not loving ourselves.
Last week too, for me, I was like, oh no, Molly has a migraine. Here mine comes. And I was like, I'm gonna hang in. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like I can't even see straight. So I appreciate that. And you know, that's one great way that Molly and I support each other, is because we're patient with each other and understanding. And I think that's important to have a friend that is that way for you. So let that be a self-care discovery. Who's your friend that will be there and be like, I believe you. I love you. You know?
Absolutely. Like, if you don't feel good, go take care of yourself. We're fine. We got this, you know? And, you know, again, the permission and allowing and, you know, please take care of you, I think is huge. I spent a lot of years, without really understanding the value and importance of having those kind of people in my life was. And it's really massive. Self-care is also about your community, and you know, how they support you, how they show up for you, how they make you feel, as much as it is about, you know, your supporting and showing up and giving. It's really important to have, you know, loving, nurturing people in our communities.
Like, this is, I feel like, so huge, you know. Oh, there go the police. There they go. Because I find there they are. You're right. I find that I meet a lot of people who are very open spiritually, of course. Mm-hmm. You would probably believe that, right? Whose significant others don't believe. Yes. And I feel like that's so difficult. Mm-hmm. That's got to be so difficult. So you need someone.
Mm-hmm. Community.
That you can be like, I gotta spit all this magic stuff out to you because my spouse can't hold space for it. You know, so the other thing that dropped in, they were telling me, they were like, don't forget sleep. I'm like, oh, I won't forget sleep. I won't forget sleep. And that's different for everybody. Like for me, 7.5 hours is a good amount of sleep most of the time. So
yeah. I need, I typically get around 7.5 hours. Sleep is very important to me. If I don't get enough sleep, I don't function well. And I feel like I'm in a daze all day. And the other thing too is I need alone time. There's people that function really well, plugged in and engaged all the time. I am not that person.
Yeah.
I have to have I have to have it daily. Like if I am, around, people, and, when I am not working from home, my day to day I spend in a building with, a couple of thousand people around on various floors and in cubes, and, computers and, fluorescent lights, and, noise and questions, and, it's a lot of input. So by the time I get home, I just need to insulate for,
Yeah.
for a little bit and ground. There's something
Yeah.
that I know we haven't touched on yet, but is huge for both of us, for all of us energy working folk.
Yeah, and I can even say whether I'm working with people or if I'm actively working on stuff on my computer, like
Hmm.
I need to decompress. And that is as an energy worker and as an introvert. Believe it or not, I am an introvert. Like I'm an extrovert introvert, or is it introvert extrovert?
Ambivert?
I don't know.
Is that the new
Right.
word now? Ambivert?
All right. And I really need downtime. So one thing that I find important with that is that you are vocalizing that to your partner or whoever you're living with. Like I'd be like, listen, I'm gonna need some time to myself.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not hearing a word you're saying right now because my mind can't hold space for it.
Yeah.
And I come across very straightforward, and sometimes that is not received well. But it's important that I learn how to say, I need an hour to myself. And I think that's really important. And I want to just state this because I feel like this could go hand in hand with this. Jill says, as a mom, I often struggle with self care, even though I know self care will make me a better mom. So I've been spending self-care time binging on YouTube before she gets up every morning, a little me time before I step aside and have to step into mom. Like that's really great because you've found ways to incorporate in where you can have your time because it's
Hmm.
so important. And let's talk about the grounding with that, you
Yeah,
know?
one thing I do want to mention really quickly though is that, again, listening to your own needs, and how your life is structured. Self-care doesn't mean having to carve out an hour, for meditation every morning. It really is, how you can, because again, if it's going to be a hassle, if self-care is going to be a hassle, you're not going to do it. So it's about building awareness. For me, I know at first it was about building awareness of how I could do things a little bit differently that were much more caring and nurturing towards myself. And it started out with, really simple things, in choosing the food that I purchase at the grocery store, and, again, laying off the comparing, and, laying off the shaming and the guilt, and giving myself permission. Permission is a luscious,
Mhm.
juicy, wonderful, wonderful thing. So it's a really simple thing. It takes no time. It's just a shift in perspective and awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, it is different for everybody, because I know some people who are like, I get up every morning, I have my coffee, I have my hour, I do my power hour, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. And that has never really worked for me to set something in stone. I'm
Yeah.
definitely a go with the flow. So every morning's different, but I definitely, like I know I need that time.
Hmm.
And that's important for you to figure out what it is for you. And I love when you get that figured out, but also know if it has to change, be ready to go with the flow. And be able
Yes.
to vocalize that. And there's also the aspect to teaching your kids self-care. Well, what do you think you need? Because you're so used to as a mom taking care of them and giving them that, like teaching them
Hmm.
how to take that time themselves too. Well, maybe you
Ah,
just need to go cry it out in your bed and it's okay. Maybe you just
yes.
go take a nap. You'll feel better. Not all kids are going to understand that, but some are like, fine. That moodiness, they need that self-care too.
Yeah. It's I can't, looking back over my childhood, because I don't have kids, but I can't imagine just how different my outlook would be having been able to, have my feelings. Just permission to
Yeah.
feel my feelings in the moment and them not be messy or inappropriate, and obviously there's still points where, things are, it's probably not as good a time as others to, you know, completely break down, but, teaching kids how to handle that instead of stuffing it down, it's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah, and trust me, it's a learning process because, even with my niece and nephews, when they have feelings and I'm like, hey, and then I'm like, you can feel that way, but you're gonna need to go cry it out in your room. Like, like,
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a learning process. Still a shift. It's something that I have to remember because I want them to be open and they are very independent.
Yeah.
So it's something I have to remind myself as well. So grounding, and let's kind of chat about grounding, but also as energy workers, how to not just ground, but how to let go of energy that's not yours. Like that's a big
Yes.
piece of self-care. Like for me, I always activate my Reiki and then I ask for anything that's not mine and anything that needs to be released with grace and ease and be released in pure light so it can serve elsewhere. But asking for that. And for me, like I tell people, when you get in the shower, just imagine that water washing it all off. Or if you're
Yes.
doing it midday because you're feeling intense energy, imagine a waterfall running over you and washing that off. And I feel like grace and ease is super important because they will take it like that, so
Yes.
trust in that and use that energy bubble. Put yourself in your protective pink, Glinda, the Good Witch bubble, or an amber bubble is really good. We've talked a little bit about that before when we were with Ellen. And I feel like that's really important for me because that's your energy bubble, so clear all that out and then ground down in nature or put your feet in the ground or touch a tree or meditate and imagine the roots of your feet, like your feet growing roots. It's a great way to ground.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I was talking with a friend of mine about this last week that, especially as people who are energy sensitive and who, are processing large amounts of energy more
Mhm.
so than the average Joe or Jill walking around in the world. Um, you know, if you are not grounded, you're walking around like an ungrounded lightning rod,
Mhm.
and it's, I mean, you are basically, you're holding all of this energy. It needs some place to go, and so that is the purpose behind grounding, is giving that a place so you are not holding that in your own energy field. You can allow that to flow and go down into the earth. The earth is a it is an amazing transmuter
Mhm.
of energy. So imagining that coming down into the earth, if there's an amazing teacher here in the Louisville area, a channel and psychic by the name of Jesse Morgan. You've met Jesse before.
I
Who
love Jesse.
he's incredible. He does amazing channeling work, but one of the pieces that he has started to talk about in the last couple of years is also grounding into the heart, because
Hmm.
it can also act like the earth does, but you know as part of almost, we have our physical hygiene routines that incorporating, and doesn't have to be anything complex. I get, I am an intuitive empath. I work around computers and EMF all the time. So between being an empath and other energy sensitive, I'm just like a sponge, and I will find myself just getting overloaded so quickly. And so I have this little visualization where I imagine almost like a toilet handle on my hip, and imagine just hitting that and just this swirl of water just
I
kind of
love
rinsing
that.
through my system and down through my feet. It's just flush
That's
and
a great
allowing it to flow
visualization.
down. It's really, and it works like a charm, and it takes a split second and I can just keep on moving. But you will find, I mean, if you're like me, you know taking the time to, for that energetic hygiene, grounding that energy. I often will, once I release anything that no longer serves or isn't mine, I will go in and I will fill back in with golden light.
Yes.
It's an important step I learned over the past couple of years. If you're releasing anything, you want to fill back in with golden light. But it allowed me to sleep better. I was less fuzzy. It increased my intuitive abilities. It helps in a lot of ways. And you talked too about the pink bubble, and that brought up another thought that dropped in is just healthy boundaries. We have energetic boundaries with the bubble, creating energetic boundaries with spirit, creating boundaries in our personal life with the people in our lives. And I mean, just as simple as like you were saying, saying to your partner, you know what, I need a minute. I need an hour to myself. I used to run into that all the time with an ex of mine. We were living together, and he was very high energy, and I would come in from a really intense job, and I mean, he was so excited to see me and just wanted to talk and let's do dinner and let's do all of the stuff and da 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 da.
Yes.
And I was saying, I need that installation time.
I just need to go away right now.
Yeah, I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, please don't ask me any questions. That was the big thing.
Well, and knowing that, like, I would feel really bad about it. Like, I'm sorry, but I need to not be with you right now.
Yeah.
And
it's going to make it better for us in the long run.
I promise. Yes.
Yeah.
So, let me see. We have a couple of comments. You okay if I jump into that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Karen says, being at home so much is making me lazy. How do I make myself get the energy right now? Lack of movement, and I know I need to move, but stuck. I know for me, it's taking it day by day and doing the movement that feels good that day. Mm-hmm. So I've spent plenty of time doing workout programs, and that was really tough for me to stick to the same thing and what was scheduled, because some days I wasn't feeling it, so honor yourself and what you need. Like it sounds to me like I know I need, but what do you feel? Like, what do you feel like you can do that day? Maybe it's a walk around the house. Maybe it's a walk around the block. Maybe you're, doing some squats in place or doing some yoga moves and just finding what feels good that day. How do you get the energy? Well, you can, like Molly was talking about, flushing it down, and I've talked about clearing it. You can imagine your feet growing roots into the earth and pulling that energy up through your legs and through your chakra system is a great way to help energize yourself. And especially during spiritual work, I use that type of meditation so that earth energy. You talked about, Molly, using gold light to fill things in. And thank you for that, because when I do my meditations, I ask for that divine energy to fill in those voids. But I haven't been using gold light, so I'm going to give that a try for sure.
And it's, one of the things I realized too with the gold light is that, I worked with people that they didn't really respond to gold light. They worked more closely to the moon, so silver light. Yeah. They responded much more towards something along the lines of, moonlight, that silvery light, or starlight, that kind of thing. So it's, it's finding what works for you. The other thing that I will add is, I had that same issue. I am struggling with that same issue. But one of the things that I realized is that I have been much more physically still, especially during this quarantine. But I have been doing an immense amount of, spiritual work, mental work. Ask yourself why, and see if there's a reason behind the stillness. Because you may realize, you're doing a lot more work than you're really giving yourself credit for, and you're needing the stillness in order to, keep yourself, rested enough to continue to do that work that you've been doing during this time. If that makes sense.
That makes sense to me too, because, we give ourselves a hard time for not doing movement or not doing that when, like right now, a lot of us are needing a lot of rest. That during COVID, yes, but still needing a lot of rest. So being mindful, I think that's a very good point for sure. What other areas do you use as self-care?
Say that again.
What other areas or methods do you use for self-care?
Oh goodness. Let's see. I would say that space clearing is a big piece. Saging, love incense. I love things that smell good. And you know me well enough to know that I am a perfume junkie. So I love things that smell good. So, having some, not only clearing my space with energy, but Palo Santo. I love the smell of Palo Santo. And incense are things that I love. So I do that. Keeping, having a comfortable bed is really important to me. And, that's, for me, it is not only about the kind of mattress that I have, but I like squishy, cloud-like, pillows. I have, it's actually a maternity pillow, but I'm a side sleeper. So, and I hate it, like, when my knees are, like, bone, you trying to lay on your side and your knees are knocking together. So I like having a pillow, but I found this phenomenal, like, U-shaped body pillow.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, love that thing. So creating a comfortable sleep environment, having green things, plants, love plants, being in nature is a huge and not only being in nature, but also having contact with animals is a
yes,
for me.
I love animals.
I get a little weird if I don't have some sort of contact with animals. It just, they're such an important thing for me. That's some part of my energy processing is tied up with animals. So I recognize that's something that I really need.
I love that. I did some self-care last night, and part of that was, getting together with my other witches, and spending time in nature. We spent time getting it out. We went around and shared our gratitude. Like, what is it, there's something about sharing that space and being able to be that open, but also, like, I'm very much do my rituals. And I talked about earlier, like, when I do a journey or doing any kind of healing work that's big, an Epsom salt bath is important, but I've found that too around when I'm doing my moon rituals. Like, that's a piece of my release. I journal pretty often. I can't say I do it every day, but I do it pretty often. And journaling is one of mine. Just kind of zoning out. Honestly, some of my self-care is zoning out. It is listening to mindless bullshit. Like, I'm going to watch TV right now because it allows me to step out of my world and into somebody else's, and I can just be free for a moment. So I can't hate on TV. I love TV.
Absolutely.
What shows you got? Share, please. I'm out. But that's a piece of mine, and like we talked about, needing time to myself, and it's really big for me to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical, especially as we continue to move through, 2020, man. It's amazing. I was in a meeting this afternoon, and somebody's like, gosh, the year is half over.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly, right?
There's an election.
I'm like, oh my God, the year's half over, but it's only half over. But I would imagine that if things are continuing, the rest of the year is going to be super intense, just like the beginning of the year has been. So, finding community and finding quiet and the things that we need is really, and giving ourselves permission to take care of ourselves, especially if we're being feel like, we're being called to fight the big battles, and show up in big ways and support those that are, support our friends and loved ones that are in the midst of all of this turmoil, on the front lines. And we gotta take care of ourselves and take care of each other.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I didn't mean to interrupt, but speaking your truth. Speak your truth, and more importantly than anything, speak your truth to yourself. And it will come out in other places, but be honest with yourself. Be real with what you need.
Yep.
Don't shoo it away because you feel like you shouldn't need it. Just know that it's okay if you have different needs. Like, nobody else can tell you what your feelings are. You may feel totally different about things than I do, but for me to be like, well, that's bullshit, that's not what I feel, is just not okay. Like, it's not. It is not okay for anybody to tell you what you feel or what you need. They can reflect on what they feel and what they need. So, and that comes, I don't know why this is coming up or who needs this tonight, but when you're having a disagreement with a friend or a loved one and they're telling you your feelings aren't valid, you've got to know that speaking your truth is valid, your feelings are valid, and that is important for your self-care, to believe in yourself and your feelings. So you've got to believe in yourself for your self-care.
I think that's a massive, massive point. You know, we are going to be talking about shadow and the shadow and shadow work on Friday, and part of that, you know, we do that kind of work because it is paramount to healing and being healthy. You know, being emotionally and spiritually healthy, and you know, one of the principles of doing shadow work is, you know, it is impossible to heal if you can, you know, without radical honesty.
Yeah.
It's impossible to heal without radical honesty. It's impossible to be healthy emotionally and spiritually without radical honesty. And radical honesty isn't necessarily brutal.
Right.
Honesty. It's not about being mean or harsh necessarily, but it is about the truth. And you're spot on. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let me read this last comment, and then let's kind of go into what's coming up the next week, because we have a lot of great things coming. Karen said, last night I sat outside and sent Reiki to my creator and just enjoyed the nice breeze. And then I took a really hot Epsom salt bath. I slept so good. I love all of that. That's how I've been doing my work, is sending healing out to the masses. So thank you, Karen, for sharing that for sure. So
that's beautiful.
So tomorrow night, 8:00 is Astrolab.
Mm-hmm.
Friday night
At 8:00, we will be doing meeting your shadow. It's the introduction to shadow work. So we'll be doing that on Friday night at 8:00, and then
Saturday, Kat will have music from Nashville at 8, and then I think I confirmed readings with Chris. Look, I was like,
yeah, you did.
I
Yep,
did. Christopher is doing readings in my place Saturday night, so you all are in for a treat. I recommend that you look up your time of birth and location. Yes. Very important, because if you don't have that, that's something he needs for those readings. Although jump in for sure. And then Sunday
at 9:30, we have got Sunday morning reset with Molly Younker. If you guys have a chance to check her out, she does every single one of these Sunday morning resets has been amazing. You can go back and check out the ones that she's done previously in the archive. They're all there on Soulfire. So definitely check that out. And then Monday.
Yay.
Monday, Janelle Apps Ramsey, who I have known since I was in second grade, is joining us from Denver. She and I are going to be talking about becoming an ally and facing white privilege. So big conversation, and that I'm really, really looking forward to. It's really important. So we'll be doing that on Monday night at 7.
And you all will see Molly and I for interviews twice next week. Tuesday with Mary Kaswani. She is an astrologist here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Amazing astrologist, yeah.
She is. She's so great. And she's at 8 p.m. And then Dave Vickers will be with us Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. So be sure to check the time.
Excited to have him back.
We're super stoked.
Yeah, lots of good stuff.
Yay. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow and Friday, Saturday, every day. We got excited. And we have some really fun people coming after that. We're excited.
Absolutely. Be good to yourselves. Bye, everybody.